Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Rostermania went next level last night with the duo that has been terrorizing the league since 2019. Officially, it seems, breaking apart aBeZy, restricted free agent. Simp has been talking about it as well. And where may aBeZy end up going? Could it be the Los Angeles Thieves? After a change of heart, it seems, from their camp over the last couple of days, not making a change. Now it seems that they will be, but it doesn't seem like it's their SMGs that are potentially under threat. What is going on right now? We're going to get into everything today. Very much into your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, all that good stuff. Let us begin with this. TJHaLy has officially gone for the Falcons. He was there for about 2 weeks, and now he's gone. So they brought him in, Pred brought him in, I don't know who made the decision, right? But TJ comes in, Xnay goes to the flex. There was a feeling, and we'll keep this in mind, going into the World Cup, that the intention of bringing TJ and putting Xnay to the flex was to see, okay, can we pair Pred with another SMG and have Xnay on the flex? Will that work? Did it work? Well, it wasn't great. They didn't make it out of their group in the end, and it's kind of understandable that they're going to go separate ways from TJ. Where TJ goes next, very good question, because he's definitely improved over the last couple of years compared to the 2 years before that, but it's not like he ended the season on a particularly positive note. We do know that, we think at least, there's interest from the Falcons in aBeZy, and now aBeZy is, I wouldn't say available, but he is certainly gettable, it seems, as it stands, and we know that Falcons, if they wanted to make a buyout happen, that is something they could very much consider. So where TJ goes next, a very good question. This is another big free agent on the market in Kremp. So kind of unclear what Cloud9 were going to do. Gwinn was, like TJ, on a 2-week contract over the World Cup. So he's also totally unrestricted now. Attach, of course, has retired. Mac was there earlier in the season, then went to Omid at the end of the year. Sib is still there, and what happens next for him is a very good question. We know that there was interest, even before the World Cup, I think, in Falcons buying him out of the contract at Cloud9. But who knows if that's going to happen. Kremp, however, look, Cloud9 could bring him back, and I thought it was an interesting tweet, because Kremp says, C9 is allowing me to explore my options as an unrestricted free agent. If you want to win, bang my line. So here we go, baby. We've got another one of these tweets. I thought it was interesting, because usually when someone says to explore my options, it's as a restricted free agent, because I'm still under contract, but they're willing to let him go, and therefore they're allowing conversations to be had, and maybe if an agreement can be reached. But it's not really a case of allowing him to explore his options because he's unrestricted, right? His contract is over. Maybe it's a case of Kremp saying to Cloud9, hey, you know, maybe you just don't extend my 1+1 and therefore let me go. But it's not like Cloud9 have allowed him to explore his options. They've terminated his contract, or his contract has run to an end and he can do what he wants. But maybe he can come back to Cloud9. I think there should be some teams out there interested in Kremp. I guess time will tell, just because depending on where, you know, there's certain players, we know that JoeDeceives and Kremp and obviously Nastie and Ghosty, they had a pretty good run at the end of last season. So I wouldn't say it's impossible that 2 of those 4 players end up rekindling that magic somewhere else, but we'll see about that one. Unfortunately for DiamondCon, he only stepped in at the end of the year. Of course, he stepped into Gentlemate. He was on Team War before that. Before then, he got picked up. And he's a restricted free agent, so we'll see if that goes anywhere for him. We also get this one, though, from Awakening. Unrestricted free agent. Just trying to win. I need this. Hit me up. So it looks like Wake is off Boston, right? So I think for Boston's perspective, yeah, okay, maybe someone gets poached, maybe someone goes after Snoopy. I think that's not impossible, but it seems like, at least for now, they may make more changes, but I think it makes sense. If you can, keep the Snoopy Purge duo together and try and upgrade one or maybe both of the ARs. Cammy wasn't great this year, but he had a solid enough year. Wake, I think, was the weaker of the 2. So it looks like, yeah, they're going to terminate his contract and they are looking to run up a different AR combo on Boston. As I say, I think Snoopy is a player that some teams may be interested in paying a bit of money to get him out of that contract, but we know that he's been Boston's golden boy for some time. And that does not seem likely to change. So Boston making changes, Cloud9 making changes, everyone's making changes, but we had some big changes go down. We also had, just quickly, from Rambo Ray's perspective, all of the Surge guys yesterday, they lost their affiliate link thing here on Twitter, so they used to be verified through Surge. That's now no longer the case, I think, for all of those guys. So, and yeah, all 4 of those are now unrestricted free agents, and probably Surge feel like, well, let's just save the money in the off-season, right? Because, you know, don't need to pay Elon any more money when they're not going to be here anymore. But the fact that Rambo lost it as well, I don't know, just something to keep in mind there. But let's talk about FaZe. aBeZy, restricted free agent for the 2026 season. This is a day that some of us thought would never really arrive. The idea of Simp and aBeZy as a duo breaking apart, it wasn't long ago that they were saying that they expected to retire together on the same team. But things change. They've teamed together for like 6 seasons. Unprecedented levels of, well, not only success, but unprecedented levels of longevity as a duo. We've never seen it before. Even Scump and Crimsix, they didn't team together for as long as these guys did. But aBeZy, restricted free agent. And this is kind of interesting, right? And look, it's not to say necessarily that they couldn't end up on the same team together again next season on FaZe, but it feels very unlikely because typically when restricted free agency is announced, it is a decision that has been made by the team to release, like to get rid of the player, right? Because, okay, aBeZy's still under contract. If you want him, you're going to have to pay some money for him. But usually, if he wanted to stay, and if the team wanted him to stay, regardless of maybe Falcons trying to buy him out, if Falcons would come into FaZe and saying, hey, we want to buy him out, and they were having a conversation about that, would aBeZy tweet restricted free agents? Not necessarily, right? Because maybe aBeZy, in that scenario, aBeZy wants to stay and FaZe maybe want to keep him, but Falcons are paying too much money to refuse and therefore the deal happens. But in that scenario, aBeZy wouldn't be tweeting RFA. Typically, when a player tweets RFA, they've been dropped, basically. Like, that's 99% of the time, that's what's happened, is that the team has decided to go in a different direction. And maybe it makes sense at this point. We know that BenJ has had his, has had his thoughts on aBeZy's play, the Spiral gunfight for some time. He was pretty clear on stream last night, BenJ, because he finally got his wish. I don't know, that aBeZy's been removed off the team. That, in his opinion, yes, Cellium, maybe his playstyle was an issue, but aBeZy was simply not as effective in that entry role as some of the other SMGs have been. Let's say a guy like Shotzzy, just straight up more impactful than aBeZy from a statistical perspective over the last couple of seasons. And I think I can buy that argument to some degree. And I think it's going to be real exciting to see talents like this on separate teams, right? Who will aBeZy go and team with? It's a very good question. Will somebody actually buy him out of the contract? Because there are a couple of interested parties. Falcons definitely have the bread to do it if they want to do it. They may bide their time a little bit. Simp tweets this out as well. I will say there was lots of reaction, people saying like, is this just bait? Are they actually going to come together again? Just because FaZe were tweeting about it a lot. Like FaZe did a number of tweets talking about the duo, the double heart emoji and all this. So, people were kind of looking at this and saying, are they just doing some impression farming here? Look, maybe, but I don't really see why they would. And we know that there is interest from other teams in aBeZy. We know that after the results they had at the end of this season, this duo splitting up was absolutely a reasonable possibility. And, it now seems to be officially happening. We may have never thought we'd have seen the day, but Simp and aBeZy going their separate ways. Simp is not going anywhere from FaZe. He will stay and they will build a team around him. What they do for that rebuild is a very good question, and maybe some of the big names that we're going to discuss in the coming minutes with regard to Thieves could be in the conversation too. And Surge, it's got to be mentioned as well. Where does aBeZy go? Very good question. Miami were trying to take some credit for it, but, it's not like they really maybe won all that much, and FaZe were tweeting about this one as well, so it was all rather entertaining last night. We know that aBeZy and JoeDeceives are good friends, right? They get on very well, and actually, as an SMG combo, this would be very deadly. And it's something that Toronto seriously need to think about. They're building around JoeDeceives this year, that is our understanding. Over the last few years, they've been, I would say Toronto have been relatively smart with the way that they've spent their money. But now could be the time, right? aBeZy's there. He probably wants to play with Joe. Joe probably wants to play with him. This is an opportunity for Toronto to get the wallet out and say, okay, we're going to make this big move happen now, and it's going to be critical to trying to get Toronto back to the top, because beating OpTic, they didn't do it this year, did they, right? Beating OpTic, beating Thieves, beating FaZe, Falcons, whoever are going to be in the conversation. That's not going to be all that easy, and we know that, Heretics aren't far off, even though they might be making some changes. They probably will, as likely as the case was Surge. So it's all going on, as we know. We then had another very entertaining bit of drama with regard to Drazah and Kenny. So I heard about this very shortly after, I think even before the World Cup was over, that Drazah and Kenny are looking to team together again. And Taylor tweeted out yesterday, JoeDeceives says this has been the case since the World Cup. So Drazah and Ken, they won the World Championship together back in 2022. There will be big questions as to whether this is a good idea. Is that a duo? Because Kenny would run the AR. When they were a duo before, when they had success together, they had Octane, right? Octane was the main, and Drazah and Kenny at the start of the year, Drazah was on the sub, and then at the end of the year, Kenny went to the sub. But they're probably going to run this as an AR duo. Is that a good idea? Is a good question. I think I kind of like it, but I see why there will be some criticisms of this being the case. And, you know, I think people rate, at least the pros, they rate Kenny still very, very highly. And I do understand that. I think there will be some people that say, well, Drazah maybe could do better, right? Like, could Drazah... And look, if Drazah gets the call from Thieves, and, I don't know, somehow they work it out with Scrappy, then maybe this doesn't happen. But it is plausible that this could happen. I just wanted to quickly just throw an idea out there, right? Let's say Toronto, they pick up aBeZy, they get JoeDeceives, aBeZy, and then they bring in this duo, right? Ken, Drazah, JoeDeceives, aBeZy. It's a disgusting team, I think. And I don't know if they could afford it or if any team could actually make that happen, but it's something to think about because if you've got an aBeZy, JoeDeceives sub-duo, like this would be a pretty damn good AR combo in my opinion. So just something to think about there. It's just an idea, but I know that Kenny I don't think he wants to move to Toronto. I think he'd much prefer to stay in Texas. So I actually don't think that's going to happen, but just on paper, it sounds pretty all right to me. Now, it got pretty funny because BenJ is not happy about this. He reckons that this is stupid from both parties. They're going to get dropped by their SMGs at some point, and they're both being morons. And Kenny then had a few words for BenJ back. So I wanted to share these couple of clips before we then go on to discuss Los Angeles Thieves and what is going on over there.
I think they're making a massive mistake by teaming together. They are both very inconsistent slaying players, and I do not like them teaming together. It's going to result in them getting dropped by their sub duo, one of them, in like 3 or 4 months. I just don't think that this is smart. It's extremely risky and may result in one of them getting dropped mid-season. I don't like it. What if Ken runs a full-time sub? If he wants to be super cracked, because that's what you got to do now as a sub, then sure. But I don't think that that's his style of play, so I don't know. I don't like it, bro. I really think that they are going back to a comfort zone, and I don't think it's smart. I don't care, bro. I'm saying how it is. I think it's stupid. I think they're both being morons. And I hope that they don't end up doing it.
I mean, but like, listen, bro, everybody had their own opinion. I don't give a fuck. I just, like I said, I don't care about the clip. I got no comment except the fact that him saying him being cool with me running a sub is just brain dead. Like, obviously, I'm not opposed to running a sub, but it's just like, bro, what? Look, man, I got nothing to say about that. He can't call me no fucking moron, though. That guy's retarded. I mean, that guy's a moron. My bad. My bad. See? Somebody's gonna get me out of character, boy. I'm not signed to a team. We good. Bro. I'll just show. Listen, bro. Ben got it, bro. Ben got it. Just watch him out, Ben, bro. Like, I'm not a moron, boy.
BenJ's got motion as well, because then after all this drama, Kenny then says, okay, you know what, let's drop beef. I don't want the smoke for the BenJ, so we're going to call it off. You got it, King J. I promise not to call you and Zach morons again, GG's. And Kenny says, nah, he is a moron, just not me, you know. Keep my name out of your mouth or whatever. But let's talk about Thieves, because a couple of days ago, July the 29th, Ghost I Hope said LA Thieves are going to stick together. And at the time I said, you know what, maybe that is true, but I felt like that was not exactly guaranteed, right? With things on the market and so many players available, it felt like it was not for sure that Thieves were going to stick together. Now, at the time, there was a feeling as, okay, Envoy's not been great this season, really, in the big moments. I think Envoy actually has been pretty good. There's a bit of recency bias in play, but also that recency bias is important, right? Because it was the 2 biggest events of the season at the end of the year. So that's why Envoy's performances there obviously do carry more weight, whatever you want to say, recency bias. But we know that Scrap and Envoy get along well. They've had good success together before on Toronto. Scrap brought Envoy along to this team. He's also part of that Thieves culture. He was there before several years ago, won a world championship with the team, and I think still does his role very well. And when it worked, HyDra and Envoy were definitely on point. Could you do better than Envoy with another SMG? CleanX is available, but obviously that would be Scrap kind of admitting a mistake, bringing the wrong SMG over from Toronto in the first place. Is there other options on the table? Is aBeZy available? You know, maybe he is, right? If you have the money to do so. But I didn't feel like Envoy was going to be the player most at risk. I thought it was actually more likely to be Ghosty. And a couple of reasons for that. He wasn't part of the team that came over. Scrap and HyDra were going to be a duo, and they brought Envoy with them. If there was ever an odd man out on that Thieves team, it was Ghosty, the man who was there originally, but kind of had his team usurped from underneath him. Then we had the moment at the World Cup. He was standing up, he was talking trash to the Surge guys about the snake in. It didn't really feel like the rest of the team were vibing so much with that. And we know that historically Ghosty, you know, when he was on OpTic, at the end of that season, Shotzzy, after they dropped him, were like, look, it was nothing in game with Ghosty. Great player, great leader, great mentality, fantastic communication, talented player, but it was the outside of the game stuff that was getting on their nerves a little bit. And I don't know, I think at the end of the season with the results that Thieves had, I can understand if that something similar there happened at Thieves again. I don't know if that's the case, but it's just a theory based on what we saw at the World Cup. So then the Ghost of Hope says, okay then, hang on a second, it looks like things are going to be happening, and then he says in the replies, hopefully they find someone who actually wants to play objective, because we know that Scrap and HyDra don't want to, and then he says Dan is gone, and there was, yeah, so it looks like the team's going to be blowing it up, and Ghosty is going to be out of the picture. Then Shah Madrid says, no way Thieves drops Ghosty for Cellium. And then Ghost Hope says it's not Cell. The person they're going to get is a downgrade in pretty much every stat this year against Dan, and it's apparently going to be Abuzah. Now, I would say that, again, just Ghost Hope has said a lot of things. He initially said the team was going to stick. Now he's saying that for sure Abuzah's coming in for Ghosty, so just take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. But I do think this is pretty likely, but it's not like these are the only options out there right now. And again, there will be big questions that we raise on whether this is a good idea, whether it's actually an upgrade for Ghosty, like exactly what's happened there. I will just say this clip was doing the rounds. This was a clip I clearly put in the video quite a while ago now. And it was Scrappy being quizzed by Scump when Scrap was still on Toronto to say, hey, what if Ghosty came and joined you guys on Toronto? And basically Scrap said, nah, I'm good. Like, I don't want to team with that guy. So they did end up teaming together. And after the end of the year, maybe, you know, that's had some repercussions. I think it's also worth saying on the Ghosty side that his numbers this year, look at his hill time, right? Hill time and ticks per round. He was basically purple in the league. I mean, he was for pretty much every single category in those stats. Because Scrap and HyDra weren't really doing much objective work. Ghosty was doing it all from an AR perspective. So you need a player who's going to do that. And that's what Ghosty brought to the table. But it must be said that on LAN, I mean, you can see his, you know, his difference between online and LAN. Like on LAN, certainly in finals, not had the best performances. And maybe that's had a part to play in this. This was Ronnie's article on it, and as he says, the organisation looks to move on from Ghosty following the disappointing end to their campaign, and he mentions 3 key candidates, one being Abuzah, the main, you know, man that we just mentioned coming off the Surge. I think that's a very interesting discussion to have in terms of talent, but also comms and other factors, whether this is a change for, I wouldn't say change for change's sake, but a change that they feel like they need to make because of the circumstances, but maybe isn't the best idea, who knows. Other possibilities include Cellium and also Drazah, but we know that with Scrap that feels difficult to handle. But I don't know, we know that Drazah with FaZe, he did it before he got over the issue with aBeZy. Could he get over the issue with Scrap? I don't know, I don't see it yet. So I think Abuzah makes the most sense. Cellium is another very interesting option, right? He could come in, but are his comms anywhere near as good as Ghosty's? No. Is his objective work anywhere near as good as... I mean, Envoy would be doing it all, right? Like, he really would. Even if Cellium could play a bit faster and could get in the hill more, which he could, would he do the job that Ghosty did? I'm not so convinced. So, yeah, very much interested your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. Those are the updates as of this morning. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.